met, and we said, you know, we have to change the eco team dates to later in the year rather than in January because of the weather. Here we are. I'm thankful for coming. I know there's some people that are new today, so I hope you get a chance to. Somebody just got here from Wisconsin, and it's Theo back there, a retired Unitarian pastor, right? Yeah, okay. And some of the others you may not know, so I hope you have a chance to meet people. Addison back there, raise your hand, Addison. She takes the credit if the coffee's good. So,
but she also puts out water for people that get their water on.
oh, thank you, Jill. Okay. Well, anyway, it's good for all of you to be here. We'll have some more coming in. I'm going to be leaving and let Carol Kiner introduce the speaker, who many of us know, but we still really appreciate you. You're so good, Zack, and all of them you've done. I just want to announce that there's some flyers out there on the table of next Sunday, which ice is predicted next Sunday. I mean, ice on the ground. There's a documentary called Sugar Cane that we are supporting and coordinating. It's a documentary regarding boarding schools in Canada, and it's going to be at the Unitarian Church at 1 o'clock next Sunday. I know that's a lot to ask, but it's supposed it has a great reputation, so if you can make that, that'd be wonderful. Also, there are some extra brochures over here, including the Eco Team. And an Eco Team, don't ask me how many of those people are no longer with us. Some are deceased, but we got their photographs. So we're going to get a new brochure here, basically, but it gives you an idea, and we welcome you if you'd like to be a part of the Eco Team. You don't have to be a member of the church or anything, but just interested in earth care and have a passion for that. So, Carol?
Thank you, Ed. Well, thank you all for coming today, and we are so pleased to have Zack Pastor speak to us today. Zack graduated from K-State and was involved.
Carol, you're not supposed to say that.
Oh! Sorry about that. He's still a wildcat. And while he was there at the K-State University, he was very involved with activism with the students, and they organized the environmental action groups. He's had memberships with the Kansas Land Trust, and he was former member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Zack started his 12-year run as the only full-time environmental lobbyist in the state of Kansas. The Kansas chapter of Sierra Club has selected Zack to be their first Kansas chapter director in its 50-year history. So I think that is really remarkable. Zack has chaired the board of directors for the Climate and Energy Project and also for the Kansas Rural Center. He has served as interim director for the Kansas Rural Center, as well as lobbying for the Kansas chapter of the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal project. So please join me in welcoming Zack Pastor.
Well, thank you very much. You hear me okay? Sounds like I maybe keep this out here. I'm a loud talker, so that was really nice. I was a former intern for the House of Representatives. I didn't make it actually there, so just wanted to clarify that. And yeah, the university down the road is what I'd say. But anyway, thank you all for being here. And on a cold morning, thinking this is, I want to say, my fourth time speaking in the Earth Care series and all that. So thank you very much, First Presbyterian Church, the Eco Team, and all of you for being here on a cold morning. I was going to start, I don't know if it was just, being in church, but I just wanted to offer an opportunity for us to close our eyes or just, gaze off into outside or just in the room about what you think environmental progress in Kansas looks like. Okay, so I'll give you a few moments to just think about that. What might environmental progress in Kansas look like? Okay? So some of you might be thinking about environmental progress in a pretty, intense view on a micro level. So thinking about, oh, that walk I like to take, don't have any trash on the roadside or along the trail. Might it be that there's less plastic in the waterway? Or maybe you're thinking about environmental progress, you're thinking about looking across the horizon to other places and imagining Kansas with a future that it has environmental resources and enough water to last not just the next handful of decades for generations to come. Maybe you're thinking about the whole planet and this earth that we all live on, and remind ourselves that, if you zoom out far enough, we're all neighbors and relatives on this one place we call Earth. Okay, so I just ask you to think about environmental progress, because I feel strongly that if we realize what environmental progress can be, then we can achieve environmental progress. Okay, so I want to just warm us up in that way. And so, one thing I've been wanting to do here is just make sure in today's age, 2026, Happy New Year, everyone, that we check in with each other. We check in with ourselves. We check in with our neighbors to see how we're doing. So how are we feeling this morning? Are we okay? We're doing all right? Maybe we're a little tired. Okay, we're excited. Anyone feel inspired or hopeful with this nice gathering of people that care, big hearts, and thinking about the environment? Yeah, okay. And who might be a little less optimistic, maybe a little pessimistic, maybe spent some time up at the legislature recently, or maybe you're just thinking about, the violence between authorities and the people up in Minnesota, or you're reflecting on the previous year and the wildfires out in California, or the tornadoes as they ripped through St. Louis, etc. So maybe thinking about environmental progress, you're thinking, well, wait a sec, we just had the third hottest year on record. The last 3 years have been the hottest on record. 175 years of measuring. The last 11 years in a row have been the hottest ever recorded. Okay. So 2024 just beat out 2025 as far as the hottest global temperatures and all that. But we saw the warmest ocean temperature on record this year. We also saw the highest amount of greenhouse gases we've seen several years, so it's not getting much better. So I just think about that, and that can cause feelings of worries and nervousness. Maybe you're feeling curious about how we're going to try to achieve progress. But it's important to feel those things, because I think we need to think a little bit more with the heart to help the mind out, because we got a lot of solutions to environmental progress. We know we need to try to change our irrigation practices, or go to alternative crops, or figure out a solution, because we're using way too much water in western Kansas. We're growing crops that shouldn't really survive unless we cheat future generations by using the mined water out of the aquifer. So we have these ideas. We know we need to turn to renewable energy and clean energy solutions, maybe store the energy that we use, that we create by the wind and sun, those natural elements that we can harness. I like to say we can use more energy from the heavens than the depths of hell. We're relying on carbon matter from millenniums past, or whatever you want to say, the old dinosaurs for oil and coal and fossil fuels, and we still think that that's the best way to power our society. So I just wanted to bring those forward, but as we realize environmental progress, I think about enlightenment that we need to do with our hearts as well as with our minds. That's conscientiousness. Now I'd say, we should be more conscious about things. We should be more aware of what's happening in the world around us and environment. But I think conscious is kind of the wrong word. Conscious is about being aware and making sense, having a sense of surroundings, being awake. But conscientiousness is the desire to do something good with that understanding of what's around you. Think about it as your moral compass or work ethic. When you have the sense of things to do something about it. So I think about, there's a lot of terms, but, and we get accused of being woke, of being aware of things. I don't think that was a bad thing, being aware of things. But I just say we got to turn woke to stoke. We got to stir up activity and progress and help stir up these emotions within our peers, our neighbors. So it's not just one thing to be aware, but actually doing something about it. So being conscientious. Okay, so that's just the interlude, but I just want to say that I was speaking at the Sisters of Leavenworth Charity, Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, nuns and all that, up in St. Mary's. And I was thinking about one of the words that were offered by Sister Linda Roth is, in their mission is the work is to make God visible in the world and to be a service to those who most need it. And so I was thinking about that word visible in the world and trying to think about, well, what can we achieve if we think about the solutions in front of us as we visualize them? We'll get into the details here shortly. But in order to see it in our minds and in our hearts, then we can achieve it. And that reminded me of Helen Keller, who was also spiritually motivated, who said it best, I think. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. And she's speaking to the inner vision, the deep conviction that is motivated by emotions versus just the physical sight of things. Okay? All right. Okay. We're getting warmed up on a cold day. We're getting warmed up. Hopefully the heart is feeling full. And that's just the theory of change I've been trying to help myself, my teammates, colleagues, neighbors, legislators even realize that we think about some of the most precious, beautiful things in life, you think about loved ones, probably think about being inspired, just a beautiful day, something's come upon you. I think the beauty of nature can help inspire us. Those things are going to really help us drive a deeper understanding of this, again, one place we live on earth, this place in Kansas that we live. And so hopefully those things we get to first, and then we'll talk about policies. We'll talk about actions that we need to do. We know that, hey, it's so much better when we don't see a bunch of trash in the waterway on the side of the road. So much better when we can have clear skies. Remember when the pandemic just started and things were shutting down? And then over the cities, the pollution disappeared. Just briefly until it started back up again. But we had clear skies over the cities. And wouldn't it be nice if it was like that all the time? Okay. So we get there, we get to the moral imperative, we get to the conviction that we need to do something for future generations. Okay, that's one. I just had a baby. I don't know if that got announced. So I'm a new director. Yeah, I've been a long time lobbyist, but I'm a new dad. 1 month year old. Okay, well, in a week now, a month and a week. Mabel, born in LMH. So I think the future's in my hands, I think about that and what that's meant to me. But I think before Mabel, before I became a dad, I think about future generations, everybody else's loved one. You might think about your loved ones in the future ahead of us. But I also think about doing this environmental progress is respect out of our past and previous generations, okay, that worked hard to help us achieve a good life, and to honor the opportunity to make sure that this world stays livable, that the opportunity is in front of others just as it was afforded to us. Does that make any sense? We all with that? Okay. So that's the beginning of talking about, we have serious environmental issues in Kansas that need significantly addressed, okay? Who feels like, what's the most pressing environmental issue in Kansas?
Water.
Water, okay. Well, why do you say that?
Well, the warehouse used and the mining of it without possibly, and the lack of policy until lately, to try to conserve.
Yeah. Well, I'd say water's pretty fundamental to life. It's should be the top issue on a lot of our minds. I know if we go without 3 days without water, we're in a world of hurt, you know? And so water's pretty precious. We think about a little less than 50,000 Kansans. Dozens of communities out in western Kansas are at the prospect of seeing their wells dry up in 15 years. So what do we do if we don't have water? 15 years is going to be too far away from now. That's a serious problem, and it demands we do something about it. Not today, not this year. The legislature, the governor wants to do something, leave a legacy, water being one of them. She'd like her political legacy to be, which is amazing. Should have happened a long time ago. We knew this issue was coming, and it's going to continue to happen, and I hope the legislature can do it this year. There's a lot happening. There's a water task force, new water task force. There used to be a blue ribbon task force for funding water. That wasn't that long ago, 8 or 9 years ago or something like that. I didn't make that blue ribbon committee, unfortunately. I put myself on the red ribbon committee, and there's only me on that one. Blue ribbon, a water committee said we need somewhere north of $50 million initially. Took several years. Finally, the legislature, just a few years back, passed historic funding for water. Not to the tune of $50 million, but it was a significant increase in water. So they're back again. Well, can we just put money and resources into changing water practices? I don't know. They had a number of, they had a lot more applications for water projects across the state than they were able to fund. That's a good sign. Groups, individuals banded together, communities, put in water applications to say, hey, we're going to try to reduce our water use. And that's good. I mean, some of those projects were funded. But when we talk about thousands of water rights that have been allocated, how do we rein those in? That's kind of the elephant in the room. How do we stop the system of growing corn in a semi-arid climate that requires so much water to feed cows and animals and produce ethanol? Seems like we got a few priorities a little misaligned, okay? We could prioritize beneficial uses of water in Kansas. Right now there's a number of them. They call them beneficial uses. We can use them for drinking, we can use them for industry, for stock water, so on and so forth. But we don't have a priority system, to my knowledge. And so, if we're saying that it's a beneficial use to use water for fracking and purposely contaminate water by putting chemicals in it and pressurizing it in the ground so we can get a fraction of oil and gas to come up, only for that wastewater to have to be disposed even further in the ground and then cause issues with induced seismicity and man-made earthquakes in Kansas. Oh, now we got man-made earthquakes. Then seems like that might be a little bit of a secondary need, if a need is a need at all, versus drinking water for communities, okay? So we got to get our priorities straight. We might have to ask our legal system, the courts, maybe a task force to think about water rights in Kansas, and if the water belongs to the people of Kansas, then can we pull them back? Can we condition those rights, the lease of the right, I guess, to in a lot of cases, profiteers, the farmers, they're using it to grow crops, but for a private gain, that money goes back into their pocket. Yeah, there'll be some exports or some agricultural crops, but maybe we should think about if 85% of the state's water is used by 15% of the state's farmers, yet irrigators don't pay a fee into the state water plant fund. Okay, they might pay a fee if it's for their pesticide use, or if they have animals for stock water, etc., fertilizers, but not for irrigated water use. Doesn't go in the state water plant fund. Might go to local groundwater management districts, but there is no fee that goes to the full state from irrigators right now. Can you believe it? 85% of the state's water used by 15% of the state's farmers. So just a fraction of farmers. And you say, Zach, well, come on, that's big money out west, someone's got to grow all that corn for all that cattle, and cattle prices are pretty good and all that, but maybe we could do things a little bit differently. Maybe we can turn those animals out on grass a little bit more. Maybe we could decide that we don't need as much beef to export. Maybe we have a variety of different agricultural operations in the state that offer more ecological benefits, so we're not taking from future generations. Just a thought, when we think about water issues in Kansas, I know it's not very popular to say, because I do feel, as coming from a farm family, that farmers can be great stewards of the land. They're out there on the land. But I do think that we've gotten to the system of farming a certain way to where we're using a bunch of chemical glyphosate Roundup on the land. We're utilizing more fertilizers on the land than probably necessary. So when those fertilizers wash off, they get into our water bodies that cause harmful algal blooms. They produce nitrites and nitrates in the water. There's estimates in Kansas, 30% of private drinking water wells may be contaminated with too high levels of nitrogen. That's not good. Okay, so think about water issues in Kansas. I primarily think about them in terms of agricultural issues. And if we can fix our agriculture issues, I think we'll make some more progress on water. How does everybody feel about that? It's right, and we can. We can use, instead of synthetic fertilizers, by the way, get created with a bunch of fossil fuel gas to create that, urea, ammonia, And so we could use more natural fertilizers. Again, back to nature and thinking about environmental progress, there's a couple ways we could go. We can either try to increase technology to get out of to fix the issues that we've kind of messed around with, right? So I mean, plastic is a technology that's made life in some ways a little easier, been able to do certain things, and certainly I think there's limited use of plastics will probably prevail. But then we have this big plastic problem. We got more burning of fossil fuels and refining the oils to make into plastics. We got microplastics out there in the environment and in our bodies. They found plastic on the tallest Himalayan mountain to the depths of the oceans. Okay? So I just want to offer that we can continue to innovate and create technology that will hopefully help us out. There's a lot of discussion about data centers in artificial intelligence right now. Okay? Everybody's excited about that. A little nervous about that. Well, I just think that AI is a tool that can maybe help us think about things in certain ways, compute things a little faster, automate things. There could be promise of environmental solutions there. You know, I think artificial intelligence will probably remind us of things we already know, that we probably, in order to have a livable planet, need to do something about the burning of fossil fuels, about our land protection, and all that. There'll probably be a lot of the talking points we've probably discussed already with each other. I think about AI. Well, don't forget about NI, natural intelligence. Okay? And at what cost? Data centers use way more power than a lot of things we've seen. Just a couple data centers can use as much power as coming out of one power plant. Okay, it uses a bunch of water, millions of gallons of water. They're trying to change that so it's a closed loop system, cool down the servers, these computers in the data centers in different ways. Yeah, they can do that, but that requires more electricity to cool down and all that. So we just got to think about what would this be for? What is our technological tools? What can AI, what can new smart meters for our water irrigation systems offer? Could be good and could be bad. But I guess that what I'm trying to say, there's another path here, which is going back to the basics. Okay, some might call it degrowth or whatever. I'm not sure we want to think about it like that, because I think like sometimes evolving things is getting them more simple. I've been watching, I don't know if you watch some of the cooking channels, Top Chef, and they've been, some of the best dishes are pretty simplified dishes, just a few ingredients done well. Well, that could be a metaphor for life when we do things well, like we gather with each other, we're not totally in screen world, you know. We remind ourselves what's really wonderful and important about life. And so, anyway, I'm getting away from some of the environmental issues, but I just want to create an undercurrent of values, in the sense that if we have common values here in this common place, then hopefully we remind ourselves that not only could being more eco-friendly be good for us and our soul, maybe our pocketbook, if we help reduce energy in our homes and businesses, create a healthier environment for our own lungs, but also for future generations and all that. Yeah.
So when you talk about water issues, this isn't just a Western Kansas thing. This is a Lawrence thing too. I mean, I think the silting in of Tunnel Creek affects so much of the downstream water supply. And, you know, I've been eagerly watching this experimental dredging or stirring of the silt that's going there. I think that is critical to keep us from having to go into the reservoir.
Yeah, it is a Lawrence thing. Thank you, Don. You're right. Two-thirds of Kansans get their water sourced in one way from the Kansas River. Okay, Lawrence would be a community like that. So we think about, if you look at some maps from the Kansas Geological Survey, I think they got some maps of the stream flow in Kansas from like the 60s and the 70s, and then like, I think the last one I saw was in the 2000s or something. And there's a noticeable, a lot less streams and streamways going across Kansas from that period until now. So there is a relationship between groundwater and surface water. I also think that water quality is a big issue. If we can even have water excess in Kansas, if it's being polluted with high nitrogens from agricultural runoff, etc. If we get an algae bloom in Clinton Lake, we get sedimentation into our reservoirs. It's really important. Don's talking about the hydrological injection dredging, Tuttle Creek. Tuttle Creek is 50% full of sediment right now, and so we're trying to figure out ways is that those reservoirs that we build act as flooding storage. We release it for water downstream, so they're important, but they're kind of, by design, they get filled in with sediment. Well, we're going to have a lot more sediment filled in there when we don't have good management practices of our soil. On average in Kansas, we lose about 5 tons of soil per acre per year, unless you're putting conservation practices on it. 5 tons of soil per acre per year, okay? That's a lot. You think about a pickup truck, 1-ton pickup truck with all your soil, there it goes. Do you think farmers would be interested in keeping that topsoil, the medium for growing their food on their land? Yes, they should. But how do we get cover crops to grow? What are ways that we can keep that sediment from flowing in the reservoir? Well, or the stream into the reservoir. One way we can do it is riparian buffer strips. Okay, that's a fancy word for that patch of grass or trees right next to the creekway or waterway. Okay, in Minnesota they require either 30-foot or 50-foot buffer along all waterways up there. Okay, that way you can slow down the flow of water in these extreme rainfall events. You can slow down the fertilizers that might run off the field and get absorbed by the grass or the trees, etc. Pesticides as well. So they've said there was initial little bit of pushback up there from protecting those. Farmers say, well, I can't get as many crops in because I can't farm all the way to the edge. Well, they've actually seen increase in wildlife habitat up there, biodiversity, and the crops have come around to understand that that's actually a good thing overall for the ecosystem. So there's something we could do about water in Kansas. We can test the legal theory to see if we can condition water rights, or can the government use eminent domain to buy those water rights? It'd be pretty expensive. I'm not sure if we want to do that, but we say if we're going to give you this right to use water for the benefit of Kansans that belongs to the public, then we're going to make sure that how you use that water is going to benefit the Kansans and future Kansans to come. I don't think that's too much to ask. But in some circles, you go to Topeka and they say, well, it's a property right. Well, we gave the property right over. Can we condition it or take it back? That's, my understanding, not been tested in a legal manner in Kansas, so to be determined. But at the end of the day, you got thousands of water rights out there, continue to use water, and really not much we can do about it unless we have voluntary agreements that we use less water. And that's pretty effective. Northwest Kansas, they did that. Farmers and landowners got together and said, hey, in 5 years' time, we want to reduce our water use 20%. What happened? They exceeded their goal. I think it was closer to 30% by the end of 5 or 7 years. And they actually saw that they made just as much money, if not more. Less inputs, more productivity. So we can do it that way, but we got to get others. We got to get Southwest Kansas. We got to do water quality and quantity projects in Central Kansas and Eastern Kansas too. So I got a few ideas about that. I see a few questions. Let me get to a few questions here. Sir, do you have a question?
I do. Clearly, the attitude of the current Attorney General's office and the legislature isn't going to go along with what you're talking about. And the kind of litigation you're talking about needs to come from the Attorney General, who's more interested in trying to learn how to practice law than he is anything else. And frankly, getting that group of folks, Attorney General and the legislature, to see this is a task that I think is almost impossible in our state. Until
Well, yeah, it's pretty hard. Attitude is everything. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm not sure if there is a will right now, but there could be. I mean, this has been a bipartisan issue in the legislature, and one of the, I want to say few. There's been several bipartisan issues, but this has been one I think everybody has said we need to do something about it. It's hard to get that in today's political climate in Kansas. So the legislature's saying that we could do something, could task the Attorney General with coming up with a legal analysis of water rights in Kansas. Yeah, I hear you. It's hard to do. I don't have an answer for you exactly.
Well, I
but
would vote Democrat.
yeah, we can always take it to the ballot box.
Yeah, with that in mind, in the coming legislative session, where do you think the most promise is as far as getting something through the legislature that will address some of the water issues and, specifically?
Well, so I told about there's a task force out there, and they're tasked with coming up with a sustainable source of funds for water programs in the future, but also reform into our policies. It doesn't look like they're going to get their work done in the time for this legislative session. I don't know. You can say, well, hey, this is election year, and we can't spend a whole lot of time doing that because we got to go out and campaign and raise funds and get reelected again. Things do take time. Task force should take its appropriate time to get some ideas out there. But I would say, to answer your question, I think we do need bold ideas. I hear a lot from legislators say we just need to invest more resources in water. And I just think that there's got to be a better way to do that.
Are there any bills out there that look promising this year?
Now, we had a 293-page bill, 2022, significant reform. It would change, reorganize the offices. Department of Agriculture's got a division of conservation. We got a Kansas Water Office. We got KDHE that does water and all this stuff. We got all these agencies do a little bit of, that do water. Why don't we put them all under the Office of Natural Resources and reorganize things? Maybe streamlining the bureaucracy would help. I don't know, maybe, I hope so. But I'm thinking, I think the biggest things affecting water right now are irrigation, fertilizers and synthetic fertilizers, the over-nutrients, big animal feedlots and swine facilities that have a concentrated manure amount, chemicals out there. I don't hear anything talking about that within these water resources discussions. So I think here's some ideas. How about pairing the value of your property to the value of the water underneath it in terms of irrigation? Okay, there was a policy measure they called the Oil and Gas Valuation Depletion Trust Fund that they had years ago. I think the state for a while under Brownback wasn't paying the fund, and so they just kind of scrapped it all together, my recollection. But it said if you pull oil and gas out of the ground, if you're oil and gas, have rights to oil and gas, you pull it out of the underground, you actually diminish the value of the property for the next oil and gas holder next to you because you're draining that resource. There's no reason why we couldn't apply that to water. If you're pulling water and a resource, they won't have it for future generations, or that value of that resource of water is diminished, then maybe you have to pay for that. Your value of your property get diminished, or you have to pay a tax or a fee for excessive use of water. Maybe that fee could go into the state water plan fund. Maybe it could go back to the local community, as it did with the Oil and Gas Valuation Depletion Trust Fund, and go back to the county. And maybe you could use that for conservation projects and all that stuff. Just one idea. One thing I asked, and I was sitting right next to the lobbyists for the Kansas Farm Bureau. We just heard big agriculture type of deal, modern traditional or conventional agriculture practices. I said, what do you think we ought to do about this? I said, I think we all need to get on the same page. We all need to have a common goal in mind. And when I heard common goal, I thought about the goal that we had to do 20% renewable energy by 2020. Remember that one?
Yep.
And at the end of it, where did we land at the end of 2020? 40% almost renewable energy by 2020. Now we're closer to 50% today. So I think maybe just having a goal on the books, have Kansas save 20% of the water over the next 5 to 10 years. Might not be a bad idea. So there's a few things. There's other ideas out there about pesticides and getting, nicotinoids out of our seeds and all that stuff. I think there's the buffer idea with streamways, etc. So there's a lot we can do about water. We need bold ideas, Ken, and we need them pushed up there. I think just pushing the ideas and putting them on the table will help people figure out that maybe we can do something about it. So again, back to realizing the environmental progress. We do need to realize it in our minds, and then we can actualize it with our policies. Okay, I got a few more. I can go on. I don't think about this stuff a lot, so I keep going. But just checking in with y'all. How we doing as far as time goes, and we can maybe have a few more questions. Water's a big one. I could talk about energy for some time too, but just warming us up here.
Got till 10:15.
Okay. Senator.
I'd like to hear about how the change in the calendar and the change in the budget process has affected the legislature's ability to actually have these conversations and get something done.
Well, I think you might know a little more about that than I would. Here's my observations. So I think the last legislative session in my 14 years was the most intense and quickest legislative session that maybe ever felt. Maybe it wasn't the shortest by actual term. I don't know that it was.
So here's what they've done. They have,
the legislature usually says, we're gonna have a 90-day session. And I think some of this had to do with the fact that they're paying us more to do less. But every time we were adjourned for 4 days or more, we didn't earn our daily pay. What's happened now is we get paid even when we're adjourned, and they are now counting those days. So when we break for turnaround, that's 4 more days that the legislature wasn't there, and they take it off the 90. And the significant thing is they're taking it away, they're counting the days between first adjournment and the veto session. So utilities in the House now only has 17 days during the session, since they only meet on Mondays and Wednesdays. They're asking us to have then the legislature decided, well, we're really in charge of the money, so we should have the budget. Not, the governor has to present one, the Constitution, but the legislature now is making up its own budget, and they don't have the same resources in terms of access to agencies and knowing what they need. So they start with last year's budget, no enhancements, and we'll talk about salary increases later. In the Senate, they've said, well, we don't want to have to come in at 7:30 in the morning and work every lunch hour, so we're going to have the committees do the review of the budget work. And that means in Ag Committee, next week and the week after, we're going to do the budgets for the Water Office, for Ag, for Wildlife and Parks, for Division of Health and Environment, and the State Fair. And that means we're not talking about water, and we're not talking about pesticides. We're just trying to get the budget done. And then somehow we got another $25,000 for every conservation district to match the state. The staff thought that was a one-time grant, even though the bill says in 2020, FY 2026 and every year after. So that $25,000 is no longer in the budget for the legislature. The governor saw it, thought, oh, this is a good idea, and put half the money in. So here we are going backwards.
So process is hampering our ability to get projects done and good policies created and all that. That's too bad. Yeah, it's too. When are we going to give it the time it deserves? These issues deserves. Is it a thing of near-term short-sightedness? You know, that's the question I have is, you know, why aren't we taking the time to make some strategic investments for the long term and all that? Yeah, and the change up to provide a better outcome for what? The legislature now gets to create a budget, but is going quicker helping create better policy? No, it's not. So thanks for pointing that out. Thank you, Senator. Well, I don't want to end all on a bad note. There are some opportunities at hand that we can push this legislative session. You asked about some of them. One of them is there's a dedicated push for conservation funding. Now, again, if we're not increasing program dollars, it might be kind of hard for some to say we don't want to expand governmental programs in Kansas. But what I heard from the Speaker of the House yesterday in the Republican response to the governor was that an idea we want to do our best at making sure government does successful core services. Okay? Core services. Well, I think protecting the land and the water of Kansas is a core service, right? It's the underpinnings for all other economy and life society depend on, is those basics. And so, could we include $16 million for dedicated state conservation funds? Kansas is one only of fraction of states that has dedicated conservation funds. And we could utilize that to match federal dollars that are out there. There's programs out there like the Environmental Quality Incentives Program and Conservation Stewardship Program afforded by the Farm Bill that provides $200 million to Kansans, yet we're talking about just $40 or $50 million in the water plan. So there's even more funds out there that we get from taxpayers across the country, let alone Kansas taxpayers, that could come back to Kansas if we would utilize it. Those federal programs I talked about, notoriously, there's way more people that apply than are people that are able to take advantage of those programs. So if we had state conservation dollars for working lands, or like I said, we're only one of a fraction of states that doesn't have those dedicated funds, then we could do a federal match program to get some more of those dollars to come to Kansas. Why not? That's one thing. So that's a conservation bill. There is a bill right now in House Agriculture that would help deal with that.
What's the number of that bill that we could write?
Does anybody remember off the top of their head? I'm still getting up to speed on the bill numbers. I should find out about that. Sorry about that, Carol.
Now, you're speaking about part of that is Kansas for Conservation, which is
Yeah.
We are advocates for that through LETS, and there are about 40 different organizations.
Right. 40 different organizations is really important. Lettuce is one of them, but there's certainly more out there, both environmental groups, but also agricultural groups, and even groups like Evergy and others want to see better use of water and sustainability. So if that group that has now 40 organizations demonstrate their political power, that thing would get passed in no time. You know, so I don't understand the holdup on that. I think a little bit is politics, obviously, but if we understand these basic environmental programs as core services, then potentially we could get some more traction. And then also, I'm open to non-governmental solutions. You know, if we want irrigators to pay for their water, or we develop an incentive program or a fee program to have the users pay for this versus taxpayers, I'm all fine for that. If we want to increase the penalties for polluting the water, I mean, I know that's laws, but still, that's less government programs. That's just holding those those violators accountable for excessive water use or pollution, etc. So those are just a few ideas. Let me just real quickly touch on a big part. I've talked about burning fossil fuels. We got to talk a little bit about energy, just briefly if we can. Kansas is one of the top 10 states for sunny days. We're near the bottom 10 for solar generation. Okay? We have 16% of our energy mix is nuclear, but nuclear is one of the most expensive energies out there, yet Kansas is raising its hand for a couple of nuclear prospects recently, including one that wants to build a mile underground. I'm not sure if we should be going straight to the most expensive uses of energy as our energy strategy here. We're one of the worst states for helping homes and businesses save energy on their bill in terms of energy efficiency programs. We're low in solar. We're just scratching the surface on battery storage and storing the energy that we create from our cheap wind sources. Just remind ourselves, it was just about 25 years ago we had our first wind farm in Kansas. And in 25 years, now wind power is about half of our power generation. It's some of the lowest cost resource almost in America. Yet we still pay higher bills because we're under a monopoly utility that continues to raise rates. Never mind, they made $800 million in profit last year. They were going to raise rates, $200 million. They said, no, I think it was a little over $100 million. They still got to raise rates. So how do we try to get back to basics? Again, the moral of my speech is, let's get back to the fundamentals. Let's try to get back to being in harmony with our ecological, with the ecology, with our environment, and we'll produce policy ideas that get us back to that. And I think where we all got to help each other out, not just in Lawrence, but across the state, is remind ourselves that we got more in common with each other. We're friends and neighbors, relatives. Friends might be a stronger term. Well, hopefully we become more friendly with each other in humanity. But if we remind ourselves we have more in common, we're all trying to live the good life. We all need we all count on our environment every day. Can it count on us to protect it? If we say yes to that,
Yes.
if we say yes to that, yes, then we can try to make progress going forward. We just can't say climate change is a hoax, that it's a con job. We can't just ignore that our water's running out or getting worse in terms of quality. We can't ignore that, hey, there's a lot of people making money off our utility bills going up, not us. If we can get understanding those things and realize we want to get back to basics, and hopefully we can make some progress. So that's my spiel for you today. Stay tuned, and I'll be glad to offer any updates to this group via my work with the Sierra Club and others of the State House working for the environment and with groups across the state. So thank you very much. I'll take some questions.
House Bill 2063.
2063 was that conservation bill. 2063.
I had a question about an internet source for your lobbying efforts. Is there a PDF or someplace we could go on the internet to find the bullet points that you would endorse?
Yes.
Secondly, is there states that you see as patterns for good ways of doing this?
Good questions. So first question, yes, I produce a 2 weeks, every 2 weeks we get together on the Zoom from people across the state to talk about the legislative update. That group is called Sierra Can, K-A-N, Sierra Can, Sierra Club, Sierra Can. And so anybody's welcome to join those. You can sign up on our website, Sierra Can, by going to the sierraclub.org/Kansas website. I also produce every once in a while legislative updates. I also encourage you all, if you don't get it, there's groups like the Kansas Rural Center, the Farmers Union. I think Sierra Club is also sponsored, Land Trust, that sponsor Paul Johnson's Policy Watch. And that's great. A lot of information there. It covers general state government as well as water issues, energy, etc. So I recommend that. So you'll be getting those if you sign up for Sierra Can as well. The state that I'd recommend, we don't have to look very far. I think Missouri, on the Missouri side, they do a great job with their park system and their conservation practices over there. It's pretty amazing what they're able to do, and that's just the state next door. I'm really excited because our current Secretary of Wildlife and Parks came from Missouri. So hopefully we can incorporate that. But then on the other side, Colorado, they just passed significant legislation to reduce single-use plastics. They passed legislation to encourage renewable energy and conservation use. Colorado, their rates for electricity higher than ours. Their monthly bills much lower than ours. That's because they bake into their rates programs to help people save energy. They don't use as much energy. So your rate might be higher, but your use of energy is lower, so your monthly bill's lower. Well, what do we care about? We kind of care about those monthly bills, no? But they're doing so in a responsible management system to bring down their cost of electricity. So hopefully that answers your question. Any final thoughts or questions? We'll wrap up here.
How do you keep optimistic?
How do I keep optimistic? Well, I would say, yeah, it's been a tough year. I thought not just on the environmental side, but it feels like sometimes the sky is falling, in humanity and violence across the country and the world and all that stuff. One, we can always take pride in trying our best. Okay? So we can always take pride in that. We did everything we could possibly do. I think that's one. Two, I really think that there's a positive environmental future out there. We just got to kind of recalibrate things in society, get away from the almighty dollar, maybe get back to the almighty, or maybe instead of going green in terms of money, we go green in terms of the environment. I mean, I think those things, we got some actual pragmatic policy solutions out there. I didn't cover them all today. That if we just went with those ideas for increasing a local food system that's more based on organic foods than chemically laden foods. Think about a water system, put more people in housing, see how much more productive they'll be in their work. Give them health care so they're sick so they can do their job. I mean, these are kind of basic ideas, but if we get some of those ideas together and get some momentum behind them, then I think we can turn a corner on all that. And then the other thing is, there's a lot of smart, caring, wisdom holders in society. Okay? Even some outside this room. And we can pass that on. We can inspire our peers, the next generation. And I already feel like my generation, millennials, are excited about transformational change. We just learned how to drive, but we never got a chance to take the wheel, right? So I'm excited about that and the opportunity for generational justice as part of climate change and all that. I think young people get it. They're just a little bit disillusioned right now that government's the answer, and frankly, corporations are the answer too. And when we got a president who doesn't invite just his family, but the billionaire class to stand with them as far as the agenda for America, I'm not sure that resonates with everybody. So I hope, I just think that we have to stay, where there's a will, there's a way. We have to be willful, we have to be hopeful. So I don't know if there's any other choice, Carol. Thank you, everyone. You've been very gracious audience. I'll stick around.